Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PCDIY hardware live stream. Hopefully everybody is having a good Friday, getting ready for hopefully a 3-day weekend. And for those of you that are going to have the Monday off, hopefully you guys are going to be getting ready to be able to have a nice 3-day weekend. So thank you guys for joining us for today's stream. Let's see who we have actually joining us. Hopefully everything's coming through okay in terms of audio levels. Let us know if you need to go ahead and maybe raise it and whatnot. Today's stream, we've got some pretty exciting announcements. We've got actually a brand new addition to our ROG GS series of Wi-Fi 7 based routers. So we're going to be talking about actually that guy. We've got some new actually monitor updates that we're going to be touching on. A recap of actually all of our latest generation ASUS PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD enclosures, including our latest edition, our 40 gigabits ProArt based M.2 SSD enclosure. We're going to be touching on. And what else do we have in there? I think that's probably most of it. We've got some really nice promos and deals. Actually, no, we've got one other item too with the XG27UCG-W Gen 2, the white variant. So that's our exciting new dual mode edition LCD that I'm going to be talking about. I really love that monitor, especially if you get that, appreciate that nice balance between the high pixel density of the 4K, high refresh rate, but then also that ultra high refresh rate of the 485 hertz that monitor has. So we'll be touching on that guy. And then we're also going to be doing a little bit of a feature overview, kind of a new demo of the latest generation UEFI BIOS that we introduced in 2026 for our new AEMP based motherboards. So this is going to actually be on all 9 of the new motherboards that we released in 2026. Won't be applicable to the prior generation. We do have pre-existing guides and kind of walkthroughs for those prior generations, but I wanted to be able to show you guys what that new UEFI looks like now that pretty much we've launched all of the NEO series, with the exception of the ProArt. The ProArt will be coming in the not too distant future. So it just goes ahead and gives us a little bit of a recap on that side. So we're going to go ahead and touch on that. So hey, fantastic, Erica, thanks for joining us on the stream, letting us know that everything's okay. Looks like we've also got Skyfall Raw, is that, do you say it all together? I'm happy to have you here joining us on the stream. We're also going to be launching, I think for this stream is going to be the first time I'm going to do it, hopefully moving forward. I generally try to engage in the community in different kind of capacities. We have our own great PCDIY community, which of course you guys can join by checking out that little QR code in the corner right there. But I also pop up in different kind of Discords and different kind of spaces within Reddit to monitor people's feedbacks and sometimes questions, be able to provide insights. And so I thought one thing that might be kind of cool moving forward, and previously we had it where we had actually a section that I usually answered questions from our PCDIY community, of course people here live on the stream, but I thought we're going to go ahead and launch a new segment. I haven't named it yet, so we'll see what ultimately it comes, but tentatively right now it's going to just be ASUS, Ask ASUS, help me troubleshoot. We've got a lot of people that sometimes maybe they don't have a complete understanding of features, functions, or spec. Maybe they're just wondering how something works. Maybe they actually have an issue and they're maybe wondering from some guidance on maybe how to approach their problem. So, I just want to be able to try to provide you guys a little bit more insight, a little bit more perspective, maybe help clarify some of those issues. So I pulled two specific ones. One is an interesting thing that happens on OLED monitors that some users are surprised by, even though there's a lot of good documentation actually on our product page that actually clarifies the operation of this. And then another one, it's actually going to be a little bit more of a general kind of how would you go through troubleshooting if you're maybe running into a type of an issue on your system. So we'll be jumping into that in a little bit as well. So let's also see who we have joining us. We've got Alex joining us as well on the stream. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here on today's stream. So let's go ahead and see what we've got. Oh, hey, Justin, man, fantastic. Back to the weekly streams. Yeah, definitely. We're going to be continuing the streams. Got some cool stuff planned up. Hopefully the launch of the PCDIY Hall of Fame going to be coming soon. We're going to continue doing the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. We've got some cool demos and some other updates that I'm kind of working on the back end. So yeah, I'm also thinking that probably for those of you that are generally subscribed and tuned in, we're also probably going to move to having, I think, a weekly promo day that I'm going to do. I don't know which day of the week. Maybe Wednesdays is maybe when I might tackle it, where I'll just probably do a little bit of a targeted stream, probably short in format, probably maybe like 20 minutes or something like that, just to be able to let you guys know about the promotions that we have actively going on that week. So if you kind of want to be able to keep up to speed in terms of kind of new exciting promos that we might have that generally run across our product lineup, so it could be anything from new chassis, coolers, networking, monitors, whatever it might be. I'm going to try to keep it maxed to only 5 promos within that product, so kind of the best items that I see kind of on promotion at that time, and I'll drop that kind of every week in that little self-contained little video. So hopefully for those of you that are maybe looking for, to pick something up, but you want to be able to catch a cool deal on it, that's a cool way that hopefully you guys will be able to keep up to date to that. And I'll also, I unlocked the community tab on our YouTube page. So if you guys are checking us out on YouTube, make sure to check that out. I'll be dropping more polls, more questions there, and some other cool little teasers and some other stuff in there right now. I've started to go ahead and posting some stuff there on a daily basis. So make sure to check that out. And also, I believe I have exposed it. So if you guys want to share your things for things like the PCDIY Builder Spotlight and other things like that, you can actually go ahead and leverage the community tab on our page. So make sure to go ahead and check that out as well. All right, so I think maybe, what do we think we're going to go through first? Should we go through the new products? Or should we maybe do the Ask ASUS portion first? What do you think, guys? For those of you joining us on the stream, I'll let you go ahead and you guys can pick. Do we want to do the Ask ASUS? So we've got 2 troubleshooting things. Do we want to do the new products, or do we want to just go straight into maybe the new UEFI BIOS? I'm going to go ahead and double check on a couple of little things here, and I'm going to see what the feedback is from you guys in the comments, and we'll go from there, and we'll see what's going on. And yeah, so give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and load this up. Make sure this is okay. I've got my actual Tough Gaming B850 Neo board that we're going to be using actually for this little bit of a showcase for the UEFI BIOS. Keep in mind, again, this will be applicable to all of the new X870 models. It'll also be applicable to all the new B850 models. These new models do feature, though, a new, larger, what's called option ROM, essentially the space that we store the UEFI firmware within. And so a number of the new actually enhancements are dependent actually on the larger option ROM side. So some of you might be asking, like, hey, am I going to see these things on the prior generation? You won't see this on the prior generation because it's a physical space constraint. Although in the prior generation, we already introduced a lot of really cool updates like full HD UEFI BIOS, things like Q dashboard, and some other cool stuff. So maybe if you haven't actually checked out even some of those newer boards, maybe you're still on maybe an even prior generation board, maybe some of these other updates that are actually going to go through and walk through on the new UEFI firmware might actually be kind of interesting or exciting for you as well. So if you haven't kind of checked out the UEFI BIOS in a few years, you might overall be surprised just in general. So let's see if we have any feedback on which one we want to go with. Doesn't look like we have actually any overall kind of one direction or another. So I think I'm going to probably, I'm going to go with the troubleshooting questions. So let's go ahead and go that route. All right, so let's go ahead and bring this up here. And yeah, so this little section right here called Ask ASUS, Help Me Troubleshoot. So what was the first issue that I saw here? So this was from a user that had just purchased one of our brand new monitors. It's actually one of our ProArt series monitors, the PA27UCG-W. Fantastic display. It's a QD OLED 240 hertz 4K based display. Really premium based design aesthetic, but he had some questions regarding, hey, how come when I'm kind of opening up web pages and when I kind of go from one portion of the desktop to another portion of the desktop, I see changes within kind of how bright the screen is. And some users think, oh, this is a defect. There's a problem with the monitor. There's a quality control issue. All of those things are 100% wrong. It's just a lack of understanding in terms of actually how the panel technology works. So one really big fundamental difference that you have between, let's say, an LCD display and between an OLED display is going to be that with OLED displays, they generally have had much lower sustained what is called SDR brightness. So when you're working in your desktop environment, so like when you're opening up your browser, you're opening up, your Windows Explorer, you're launching different types of applications, you're minimizing, expanding, doing different things like that, you can definitely go from a very bright background to a dark background. Imagine if you kind of open up a web page and it's very bright and white, or you open up a document and it's white, and then all of a sudden you shift to something that's darker. These actually large changes can trigger something that's called ABL, or an average brightness limiter. And now ABL was implemented into OLED-based panels for a number of different reasons. It has to do with maximizing the panel's longevity and overall reliability and performance, right? And it is actually present on all types of OLED displays, but over the last few generations, it's been refined and improved more and more, especially on the TV side, where some users almost don't even see it, but it is present in even TVs. Just the range of the ABL might be less noticeable. And generally, because of the way that video content works, it generally actually doesn't tend to have as much of a presentation for this kind of effect in the same way that a desktop does, especially from a user perspective, where it's very easy for you to kind of go from this really bright to a really dark based background. Now, we have a lot of experience of this, really being the leader in the market in terms of offering OLED-based solutions. So even almost all the way back to the very first OLED display that we released, we implemented a feature on our OLED-based monitors that is called a UBL, or a Uniform Brightness Limiter. So let me go ahead and bring up actually the product page here, and I can show you a little bit more concretely what I'm actually talking about through here, through actually a portion that we have here on our product page. So if you scroll down to the product page, this is the actual monitor that we're talking about right here. Although what I'm going to be noting here is actually applicable to all types of OLED displays. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about our much earlier generation Japan OLED-based displays, W OLED displays, QD OLED displays, tandem OLED displays, all of them are going to have an ABL implementation. Now the range of the ABL can vary, and also your settings will also heavily influence this as well. In most situations, most users shouldn't generally be running HDR, which will allow for the largest amount of peak brightness for your monitor when you're just running your kind of regular desktop mode. You should be running it in SDR. HDR should really be only used for when you're playing games in HDR, or you're watching video content or streaming services or things like that that are also benefiting from that high dynamic range, right? But if we scroll down here, we're going to keep scrolling, we're going to keep scrolling. You can see right here actually this feature that's called Uniform Brightness Setting. You'll actually see that we have actually a screen recording that shows you without the Uniform Brightness Setting, and then with the Uniform Brightness Setting. So you can actually notice that when we go to that kind of that smaller window size, right, it's actually a bit brighter. And then actually when you get to that much larger size where there's a lot more white, right, which actually would increase the thermal runaway, which is not healthy for an OLED display. The hotter that the panel gets, generally you're also going to have degradation to the actual OLED substrate. Now there's a lot of things that we do to help to mitigate to mitigate a burn-in and other aspects that could be degrading to the actual performance of the OLED monitor, including specialized like thermal designs and tuning and different items like that. But what we're specifically showing you here is that we have a toggle option that we have, which is this essentially this UBL, or this uniform brightness setting. So this uniform brightness setting will essentially tamp down the peak brightness of the monitor down to 250 nits, which for many users I think is going to be very, very usable. Now, to be transparent, I would say that an LCD is still going to offer a higher level of SDR based brightness. So if you're coming from a very bright SDR monitor that might be operating at 350, 400 plus nits in terms of SDR operation, the OLED panel is going to seem a bit dimmer, and that's just one of the trade-offs that you have. The OLED will still offer far superior, of course, color saturation, right? Much better dynamic range performance and contrast performance, as well as other benefits that OLED gives you. But that's still where there's a key advantage with LCDs, is that you don't see this differential between kind of like opening something up or not opening something up. It's very consistent whether you're talking about kind of small window sizes or large window sizes in terms of being able to maintain the brightness. But with an OLED-based panel, because they operate differently, they have this issue. Now, we were the first manufacturer to actively implement UBL across all of our OLED displays. So the great thing is it doesn't matter which OLED monitor you get from us. If this is something you experience, all you need to do is just go into the OSD menu, toggle on the uniform brightness limiter, and you're going to be good to go, and you won't experience this. Now, some users also are a little bit more sensitive to the others, so it might be that maybe you don't even notice it at all, while other users actually might be quite a bit more sensitive to it. This is also where sometimes having choice or flexibility within the monitor stack can be advantageous. If you're somebody that also wants higher levels of SDR brightness, that's where we have a class-leading portfolio, so that you can take a look at whether we have QD OLED solutions, a W OLED solution, or a tandem solution, to figure out kind of which one is going to give you that right balance in terms of the specifications and the performance that you're looking for. But I definitely would say that for the current generation of OLED displays that we offer, I'd say the base SDR brightness is very usable, and for most users, they're not going to have any issues transitioning to that. I would probably say the only immediate most comparable item that we sometimes still see from users is text rendering performance, where text rendering tends to be still a little bit softer or a little bit more fringing on some of the lettering as compared to an LCD, and that's just because what is called the subpixel structure is different for an OLED display than it is for an LCD, although that is finally changing with new OLED displays that are now featuring what is called a pure RGB stripe implementation, which allows for the best presentation of text from a desktop environment. And that ultimately all comes back from, when OLED panels were originally designed and developed, they weren't really focused at optimized subpixel structures that were designed for text rendering. They were designed for video frame presentation, right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. If this is something that you've experienced or something that maybe you're wondering about, you have some more insight on that. Before I go into that next question, let me go ahead and see if there's any quick feedback on this side, and we'll kind of go from there. BTF Wi-Fi. Saw the Z890 BTF Wi-Fi. Any chance of a white version? Right now, no plans. We don't have any roadmap plans for any new BTF-based options. So as of right now, nothing planned in that regard. I think the last late updates that we had in terms of white was the new Tough Gaming Mini ITX motherboard that we have, that it's going to be in white, and I think a micro ATX update that was in white, and then of course the new updates that we have on the Neo series, which, as you're already aware, Justin, right, we have the X870A, we have the and also the A, and then the B850-A, which are of course the recent ones that hadn't yet come out to market. Okay. Let me go ahead and see a quick question here. So Alex goes, I hope you can help me with the monitor. I'm still looking for a good monitor for this PC that I have. I want it to be compatible with an ASUS ROG Maximus Z890 Hero graphics card and a 5090. You pretty much have your pick of the show. You know, I've talked about a lot of different displays in, you know, different weeks. I mean, I would pretty much ask you to tell me what you think your budget is. Now, I ran a really interesting poll on our actually YouTube community page. Let me see if I can go ahead and bring this up here. That actually kind of answered this, that really for this type of user or somebody like you that has a very high-end system, the question would be, you know, what is kind of the spec that you're looking for? I know Justin, who's here actually in the chat and watching on the stream, he's a very high-end user. He's got a lot of really nice high-end configurations, but it would be interesting to see kind of what his thoughts are as far as like what's the right option for somebody like you. But let me go ahead and open up this little page here, and you can check out here. So these would probably be some kind of base recommendations. So I asked right here, hey, you know, you can only pick one. Which one would you go with, right? Now, when you talk about a very high-end system like this, you would generally be looking at the higher-end kind of set of monitors that are available. These are kind of our flagship series options. We have the ROG Swift, the PG27AQWP-W. This is a flagship tandem-based display with our true black glossy. This is a 1440p 540 hertz display. Absolutely just an amazing monitor. We also have the AQWMG version, which is literally the same exact monitor, just 280 hertz, which I think is amazing for almost about half the price. I think that's a fantastic monitor. Really, the main differential is, you know, the PG has a nicer base design, and it has that translucent kind of white rear design aesthetic with the silver. But if you're just talking about kind of the key next generation tandem technology, that true black gloss coating that we have on there, that 280 hertz refresh rate, I think that's an amazing option, you know, and that one is going to be coming in at $650, right, versus, you know, the Dash W, which is going to be a bit more expensive. But if you really want peak motion clarity, that's as good as it gets, and that's not even counting, of course, the toggle mode that it has at running at you know, HD at 720 hertz. So that's really only going to be for the competitive players out there. Then we've got the PG32UCG-W Gen 3. I think for a lot of people, this is the go-to, really the key monitor out there in the segment when you talk about an ultra kind of immersive experience. 32 inches, 4K, 240 hertz, supports Dolby Vision, amazing performance from that QD-OLED panel in terms of color saturation. This is it's the only actually version of this monitor on the market that actually has the new EL panel material. So even compared to the Gen 1 or Gen 2, has a little bit more brightness to it. It has our new anti-flicker tech. It has the new Black Shield film coating, which I absolutely love because that helps to resolve the ambient light handling issue of prior generation QD OLED based monitors, which depending on your environment may or may not be a factor. It's also significantly less prone to kind of scratches or abrasions. You know, USB PD spec, if you think that's going to be useful for you and some type of secondary device that you're going to connect. Picture and picture by picture support, you know, which is really cool. Auto KVM functionality, so if you want to have two devices and a keyboard and mouse connected to the monitor, you can span those across there. And even aspect ratio control, which kind of lets you to use this like as a secondary monitor, like a dual mode, where I've done this on my PG32UCG-W, which is I run it in an aspect ratio mode, so 27 inches, 1440p, 240 hertz. So that's a fantastic kind of balancing act when I really want the super high resolution, the better desktop productivity, that immersion. I can do the 4K native 32 inches, 240 hertz, or I can drop down to that aspect ratio mode, 27 inches, 1440p, 240 hertz. And then the other one is going to be right here, which we have the pre-order live right now. We also have the XG34 version, which will be coming in very shortly. Price difference, you know, $12.99 to $89.99, but this is similar to that first monitor option. This is going to be a 34-inch. It's the latest generation QD OLED technology. It's the only monitor on the market that has the now new pure RGB subpixel structure, so it's really, really great for text. It actually even improves a bit, I'd say, of actually definition and rendering with some game imagery as well. But fantastic option. 3440 by 1440, 360 hertz. Also has that black shield film technology. Has the picture-in-picture picture support. It has aspect ratio support. It's packed in. So these would probably be my 3 recommendations. And then there's like 2 alternates as well. If you don't want kind of the flagship version, you can get the XG version. So again, the XG version of this version is the 280 hertz, and the XG version of this one is also 280 hertz, which to me, that's still an awesome option, especially at a few $100s less. I think it's a great option. So those would probably be my 3 recommendations. If you have more kind of feedback in terms of what you might be looking for, I can give you some others, but that's what I would probably recommend, is take a look at one of those. And if you guys haven't jumped into the YouTube community and dropped in your recommendation, which one would you get? I'd love to know. Let me know what you guys can think, right? But let me get ready to go into the second question that we have right now. So we're going to do that in a moment. But I think there was a couple of questions that popped up right there. Let me see. We've got Namor joining us, man. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us here on the stream. Very cool. So you saying that the volume's a little bit soft. How's the volume for everybody else? If the volume thinks it need to be a little bit louder, let me know. I can go ahead and raise it. Let me go ahead and raise it a little bit more. Let me know if that's good for you guys. We'll go ahead and raise it a little bit more. So let me know how that sounds for you guys. Okay. Namor says that he would go with the 4K. That's the 32-inch 4K 240 hertz, right? Justin also says he would do the 32-inch 4K, right? He has the UCDM. It's been great, right? And then he also has a 27-inch on each side. So that's a flex, right? He's running a triple monitor setup. 32-inch in that primary, and then 2 27s on the side. That's a pretty nice version. Okay, yeah, I went ahead and raised it a little bit more. So let me know how that's going. I'll raise a little bit more, and we'll let you know how that goes. Okay, thank you guys so much for that. Good feedback. Okay, as always. So let's go ahead and go with our second question. So this one was an interesting one too that I had from a user. So let me go ahead and let me see if I can bring up his Reddit post here, because it's a little bit lengthy. But I want to go ahead and try to see if I can kind of hit the most of his sensors. So he has a new build that he finished putting together. It's actually a 9850 X3D system. He's running out on a ASUS TUF Gaming B850 based motherboard. He's got 32 gigabytes of memory, a specific SSD, and some other kind of components in there. And overall, what he was noting was that he was having an issue that essentially, variably sometimes his system just seems like he's gaming and it can start to stutter, and then his system locks up, and it's kind of variable. Sometimes it doesn't happen all the time, as far as like the amount of interval, like the timing interval that he can have that he experiences the problem, but it's pretty consistent, right? So he gave me a couple of other details, but usually what I try to tell users is there's kind of like a methodology to kind of try to debug your system and try to figure things out. The first thing that I'll tell most users is that in most situations, if you're not talking about like the thermal issue, which in most situations a thermal issue would probably present itself in a pretty short period of time. Like if your cooler wasn't working correctly and your system was shutting down because of temperature, you would probably notice that far less than within 30 minutes. You would probably notice that within a couple of minutes of your system running. Although it does depend on a couple of items, but I don't think it's a thermal based item. And in reality, actually, most of these type of kind of crashing issues that you tend to get within a fixed interval usually tend to be actually software related or system related, but they can sometimes be maybe a compatibility issue, maybe like a firmware based issue, could be software based issue, but they usually tend to be OS related. So the number one thing I see a lot of times builders mess up on or make a mistake on is they take their old SSD with an old operating system and they put it on a new system because they had somebody that told them, oh, you can just migrate everything over and it'll work fine. Windows is actually pretty resilient in this regard, and you can generally have it work, but it's not ideal. So I always first and foremost recommend a clean installation. That's the first thing. And then verify that your issue is actually happening with the clean installation. If you still have the problem, the second thing is to verify that it's not some type of performance tuning setting. So when you do set up a system, you can engage things like an expo overclock for your memory, which can actually sometimes seem like it's stable, but it's not fully stable. Now, normally if you watch our kind of prior videos where we've outlined kind of DRAM overclocking, we recommend that after you always engage your overclock, you actually want to go through a full stress test and verify and make sure that your actually DRAM is stable. It's not uncommon that sometimes you can have like a 90% level of stability, but 10% of the scenario, depending on how it's being loaded into the memory, how it's swapping back and forth, there just might be a little bit of an instability point, and that can actually cause a problem. So the best way to check for this is to load your UEFI defaults, is to reboot into the UEFI, load up defaults F5, and then post and reboot back into your operating system and see if you have your issues. So this will of course bring the speed back down to a much lower speed. It's baseline, what's called base SPD, but it's important again that we need to have a control. We need to make sure that everything is working nominally, right? Now, if you still have the issue at those defaults, the next troubleshooting step would be running like a full system stress test. I'm a really big fan of two different utilities that exist out there. You can use OCCT, which you can get for free. There's also a paid version that I strongly recommend you consider. And there's also another great application that ASUS has partners with that actually comes with many of our motherboards, whether it's a limited trial version, actually a full advanced version on our ROG motherboards, which is ASUS64. It offers a full stress test that you can test your CPU, your memory, your GPU. You can actually even test your monitor. You can do a lot of really cool tests with it. You can also download a trial version of it too, so you can kind of initially download it, test things out, and see if things are working. But that's my next recommendation, is actually run a stress test. You want to run that for generally at least about an hour. And make sure that your system doesn't shut off. And this is to help to add some stress and make sure that your power supply is okay, make sure that your memory, when it's fully saturated and all the memory is being utilized, that it doesn't crash, your cooler, everything is working okay. That's a check that you just want to be able to run. ASUS64 also has a benefit that it does have an SSD benchmark, and this can be another thing. If you suspect your SSD, you might want to actually test your SSD and make sure that the performance is working the way that it should, right? And so you would want to run like an SSD benchmark. I really like Atto. Atto is a great one that's free. You can do the SSD benchmark within ASUS64. There's a couple of other ones that are out there as well, but the main thing is you want to check to see if you saturate and you start to hit that SSD, is it going to crash or is it going to be working normally? And is the performance that they advertise, is it working correct? So these would be kind of like my normal steps, and generally depending on one output or the other, depending on what you're running, this will kind of start to help you to kind of go like, oh, I found the problem is here versus the problems here. Two other things is just make sure you of course have your UEFI BIOS up to date. Chipset drivers can also be important for sometimes issues when it comes to SSDs, and just how your kind of operating system and your hardware is working with that. So you do want to make sure that you update your chipset drivers. The last two items that I would recommend, and sometimes people overlook, is going to be that if your manufacturer who makes your SSD makes an SSD utility, is to actually load up the SSD utility and to check the actual smart data that's being reported by your SSD. In some situations, your SSD might be marginal or might be operating correctly, and you want to actually check these value points. Now, not all manufacturers will have an SSD utility. Most of them do, but I'm going to show you one cool thing that you can do on ASUS motherboards that we have built in our UEFI that allow you to actually check this in a low-level way, even actually outside of the operating system. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a test. We're going to go into our UEFI BIOS on our motherboard and show you actually how this works. So I've got my demo system here, and again, I did raise the volume levels. Let me know, guys, if the audio is coming through okay. And we're going to go to a little bit of a picture-in-picture mode, so let me know if the audio is looking okay, guys. So, and the video is looking okay in the picture-by-picture. So we're going to change our outputs here. All right, so that's a little bit of an Inception vibe right there. We got picture-in-picture, but we're going to go ahead and switch over to this. Yep, okay. So there we go, can see that. Okay, and let me go ahead and reboot this here. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to boot into our UEFI BIOS, right? And there's actually a feature that we've had now on our motherboards for a couple of generations, where we have a built-in option to actually access the smart data for the actual SSD. So this will actually allow you to check the data, and if you actually want to run a smart test, there's generally two types of tests that you can run. One's a short test and one's a long test, and you can run that, and then that will allow you to kind of see some more information. So let's go ahead and let me also go ahead and remove this widget for you guys. Okay, and I think it's is the mirrored layout looking okay for you guys there? Just let me guys know. So I think it's, there it goes. Let me flip that. So is that better for you guys? Hopefully. So what you would want to go and do is you would want to head over into this, and this will be pretty much on most of our current motherboards, right? You can scroll down and you'll find your data here. So let's go ahead and go down here. I'm sorry. Okay, so you can see right here we have our NVMe configuration. This should actually show you your drive if you've got your PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD installed. When you go there, you'll be able to see some data on it. And you can see right here that there's a self-test option. There's a short and then there's an extended. And you can actually see right here, you can actually run the controller only. Controller only test is a pretty good test, but I would recommend actually doing both the controller and the namespace, right? And then you can go ahead and let's say, hey, I want to run the extended. The extended won't really take that long either, so it's not like it's a huge time differential. So for most situations, I would generally recommend that you run the extended. But for just purposes right here, I'm just going to do the short. We'll just do the controller, and I'll run that. And this will actually run the test, so you can see it actually does a pass, and that allows me to have like this initial sanity check that, hey, the way that the motherboard is generally engaging with the actual SSD, it's actually working correctly. The smart values, there's actually certain trigger values that can actually cause the drive to be reported as failing. Now, generally, if this is the case, the motherboard will actually report this to you and let you know that there's a smart failure that is occurring or that's been detected. But sometimes, depending on certain values, it might not always actually be fully triggered. So this is just a way of kind of extending this out and be able to do that. So again, you can kind of see if I want to be able to run it, runs through. You can see that the pass-through was pretty quick. And that is just a kind of quick and easy way that you can attempt to kind of corroborate and make sure that your M.2 SSD is hopefully at least initially working correctly, right? The last thing that I would recommend is, and this is actually a surprise to some people, but you can actually have marginal CPUs. So there actually can be CPUs that are working, but they're actually not fully reliable. And some people will blame the motherboard, and then they'll even send in the motherboard and they'll say, hey, it's your guys' fault. And in reality, we check the motherboard and the motherboard's entirely okay. And there becomes a very frustrating kind of back and forth between the user because they think that we're trying to skirt something in it. That's not the case. Part of the reality is because we don't have your CPU, we don't have your SSD, we can't test. So we can only test with our known working base configuration components. But the reason why it's important to understand is that if I kind of take a look at something that is called here Q dashboard, this might make it a little bit more visually easy to understand. So if we take a look at the way that the visual of the motherboard breaks down is the PCI chipset, the PCI lanes for some of your M.2 SSDs directly come from this CPU, and those actually get wired into things like these M.2 SSD slots. Now, some users do not realize that actually a portion of the CPU can be more marginal or can be weaker and not actually operating correctly, and this can actually lead to instability or variability. But they think because their system's working, the CPU has to be perfect, and even your CPU can actually pass a stress test and it could still fail this other item. So even a kind of full CPU stress test isn't necessarily a validation to ensure that your CPU is actually not the culprit, right? So it can be a little bit more tricky to kind of debug, but we have seen internal examples of this, right? Where we actually have tested CPUs and there can be internal portions of the CPU that are connected to something else that can cause you to think it's that other device when in reality it's actually how they're linked into the CPU in terms of how it operates. This is especially common, I would say, with sometimes with graphics devices because they are of course also leveraging PCI lanes that are coming from the CPU, storage devices, and also potentially DRAM. DRAM can be influenced by, of course, the memory controller. The memory controller is here inside the CPU, and sometimes some users don't realize that the quality of the CPU and the memory controller can influence how strong, right, the motherboard is in terms of being able to drive the memory that you might have on your board. So there's a lot of logic behind this, but hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight to this, a couple of kind of troubleshooting steps that you can kind of keep in mind, and you can kind of go from there. So that's our little bit of our kind of overview there on the UEFI BIOS. We're going to get back into now the new product introduction, and then we're going to get back into our other demo here to talk about the new UEFI actually on the new generation of motherboards. But let me go ahead and back out from there, and we'll go on that side. So sorry, let me drop that here. Let me see if there's any quick questions that might have came up right there. Man, that dual OLED monitor is gold. Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Can the ASUS AI not help troubleshoot? Yeah, you can actually definitely use that. So I would say that the ASUS AI Advisor that we have, it's actually built off of a language model that we internally compiled off of our own data sets and information. So it's actually quite advantageous in that. So definitely it's free to any user that's running an ASUS motherboard, and he having a current B850 motherboard, he can download that and he can actually ask it questions, and it can give him more kind of specific guidance. Now, of course, you could use generalized, agentic based applications, whether you want to use like Gemini or ChatGPT. But what we found is generally is that the big difference between our LLM and those others is that the level of accuracy resident to the kind of the hardware experience is much better on our side, and that's just because we've internally been able to model data that's highly accurate to our understanding of the features, the function, the design, and these specific parameters, where sometimes more open general agentic based information could be pulling incorrect data sets or information that might not be accurate. But you're 100% right, you can use that, and I actually recommend it to a lot of users that if you want to kind of use as a starting point, definitely take advantage of ASUS AI Advisor. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, it comes with all of our current generation motherboards. You do have a token limit, but I think I've asked upwards of like 100 questions in a day, so it'd be pretty difficult to actually, I think, ask too many questions and to have you be timed out. And even then, it gets reset for the next day, so you would kind of be good to go. Okay. How you doing, Raf NL? I'm not sure how to say that, but hopefully there. Hey, Scott Smiley. How you doing, man? Oh, you got a picture of a bully, man. I love bully breeds, so man, thank you for joining us here on the stream, right? Let me see. Super excited for the upcoming ROG DDR5. Do you know if it'll be supported on the XX70EG and QVL? So one thing to keep in mind with the QVL is that even if the memory's not on the QVL, it doesn't really matter. From our perspective, we are always consistently updating the microcode to be able to allow for kind of good interoperability and performance, and especially with the Gene board, you got a 2 DIMM configurations, so you're going to have outstanding memory density overclocking support. I had some discussions with like Bywin, who one of the memory partners that are making the ROG certified kit. That is going to be an ultra low latency, and there's going to be a special ROG profile that'll auto engage on that board when you enable the ROG profile. I think it'll be like a cast latency like a C26, something like that, and then I forget the exact mega transfers. But overall, yes, it should be supported. There shouldn't generally be any interoperability and compatibility issues, but like always, there's going to be some variability, right? Because you're talking about overclocking memory. So your memory controller, what you always want to remember when you talk about overclocking memory, is it's not really the QVL that's important. That does add an element of importance in terms of how we validate the memory, making sure that we're working the company. But the reason why I say it's not as critically as important is because you can get memory that's on the QVL, but there's no guarantee that your memory controller is going to be the same degree of the memory controller that we test internally. An example is I can QVL a kit of memory that's an 8000 MT kit on a motherboard, right? But the reality is that there can actually be variants from, if I took 10 CPUs, so I took 10 9800X 3Ds and I tested all of them, some memory controllers might be able to comfortably be able to run at 8000 MT, and there might be other ones that maximum can't run at more than 7000 MT, and that's not a limitation from the memory kit or even the motherboard. Although on every motherboard as well as on every CPU, there's a little bit of variance, right, that occurs from production, and this is just inherent, and this is why it's overclocking. You can't guarantee with 100% consistency that you're going to say that every single one is going to be able to run at that level. The only time that you can guarantee that is when you're talking about operating at the port table spec, which is the reason why there's a difference between the AMD port table and then kind of overclock parameters. The port table is guaranteed. Every single CPU has to hit that frequency, and same thing, we'll ensure that every single product has to hit that. That being noted, I would definitely say that there's a relative margin that you can generally feel pretty high in confidence in that CPUs can generally hit when it comes to an overclocking range. And especially for, I think, for the one of the RG certified kits, which is not an ultra high MT frequency, it's more at kind of tuning down the cast latency, you generally shouldn't be running into an issue in that regard, man. But thanks for Team RG. It's still one of my absolute favorite AM5 motherboards that we've ever made in our lineup. All right. Why can't all CPUs be perfect? Can ASUS AI do some tests to kind of tell? Yeah, that's a really difficult thing to do. And I mean, you have to also consider that you're talking about super advanced production You're talking about literally making the most advanced products that exist in the industry, right? And the reality is that within anything, when you're doing mass production, there's always a little bit of variation within that, right? And there's very high quality control standards from AMD and Intel to ensure that the products that they're releasing work to an extraordinarily high degree, but there is going to be variance that does occur. And so in those situations, it's just sometimes, like I said, you're going to run into these situations. And even for the users that have experienced this, we found that, hey, they'll reach out to AMD or they'll reach out to Intel. They warrant their CPU, they get a replacement CPU, and they're back up and running. So it's not a question that you're not going to be supported by the company if you have a problem with the CPU. But there's no 100% way to check that in terms of like the full 100% validation of the CPU, right? Like beforehand. Both AMD and Intel go through very large quality control assurances to make sure that what they're shipping, they feel very confident in, and we feel very much that's the case, right? Like I said, I don't think this is going to be the majority of cases. I was just kind of giving some feedback that from a troubleshooting perspective, these are things that could potentially contribute to a possible fault that you need to be aware of. I will say that on our most advanced motherboards, our ROG motherboards, we do have our microcontrollers, our AI microcontrollers that are on boards that do allow for giving some specialized data for people that are doing overclocking that can be beneficial. And this is actually something, when we talk about being too difficult, so the reason why we're the only manufacturer in the industry that has something like this, because it literally took us years of development, and every generation it takes us tens of thousands of man hours to implement. But we actually have an advanced machine model database where we took actually at hundreds of CPU samples, we take a look at their corresponding range of performance, the corresponding voltage tables, the frequency tables, and we can actually give you information on what the expected kind of margin is of your CPU, at least in relation to overclocking, right? So we can kind of give you an indicator. Do we think your CPU is a little bit more likely to have a higher level of tuning level of performance, or a little bit lower level of tuning level performance? And this is actually something that we call the SP score, and then there's also the MC score. So we have one that's kind of for the memory controller, and then one that's more kind of for the CPU. It's a really cool feature. We've talked about this much more in depth in live streams that we've had, where we talk about performance tuning. So if you want to know more about that, you can check that out. We're also looking at maybe things now with the newer option ROM and the bigger size that we have, is maybe trying to integrate some type of stress test utility maybe into the UEFI BIOS, or maybe having like a relaunch of something that we had way back years ago. We used to have something called ExpressGate, which was like a bootable Linux environment that allowed you to run kind of like a soft OS environment to do some stuff in. Maybe offering something like that to users, right? So if you want to be able to debug and stress test your system independent of your operating system and do it in a really fast and easy way, maybe we could do something like that. So that's all something that we're always constantly looking at, seeing how can we help to improve the user experience and just overall make it better for users. So thank you for that feedback, right? So we'll see how that's kind of going there. Hey, how you doing, Estrella? Fantastic have you here on the stream. Thank you so much. And gotcha. Yeah, no problem, Raf. Okay, very cool. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. Those were the two questions, so let's get into the new products that we've got here. We're going to bang these out pretty quick here. So I want to go ahead and touch on the first one. This one's going to be the ROG Strix. This is going to be the GS-BE2700X. So this is going to be a great lineup addition to our lineup that we already, of course, have the GS B12000 and then the 18000. So the main difference here is that this model is going to be a dual band based unit, while the others are going to be a tri-band based unit. And really the tri-band is going to be most of benefit to users that really need the absolute fastest level of performance, right? It's the latest generation of devices on the market that have a 6 gigahertz enabled Wi-Fi chip. They can definitely benefit from a tri-band based unit. Now, to be really transparent, does that mean that like the performance on the dual band router is just not going to be that great? No. Wi-Fi 7 based chipset, because of the architecture, the CPU, the DRAM that they're using, all the other kind of cool technologies that are baked in, you can actually get, even with a dual band Wi-Fi 7 unit, you can get faster than gigabit Ethernet level speeds wirelessly. With this unit, you could exceed over 1.5 gigabits of wireless throughput. Now that's going to be at the peak range, so that generally means between about like 10 to like 20 feet, probably within the access point, that you could be seeing, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 plus, maybe even 1.8 gigabits of wireless throughput. So this is a really performant based product. If you want the absolute even faster speeds to that, so you want to be talking about plus you know, 2.5, 3, almost 3 gigabits of wireless throughput, then that's where you really want a product that has the tri-band based technology, and you want that 6 gigahertz. There's also the possibility of even lower latency. Those units also have some other spec upgrades of even higher end connections, but this unit I think hits a really, really nice balance of feature, function, and spec, and for the pricing. Now the BE18000 is coming in at $450, and then the 12,000 is coming at $400. We've done price promotions on those units where even you've seen as much as $100 off, which I think the BE12000 for $300 is an absolutely amazing value. But we've done some really cool stuff with this model to, I think, continue to really offer an amazing level of feature set and functionality and performance for its proposed price band that's going to be coming in at. So when we take a look here, one, coverage range is really nice. This is going to be a little bit less than the other units, which are rated for over 3,000 square feet. So 2,700 square feet, still for a lot of people, that's going to cover you probably, you know, for 85% of people. Now you can always use AI mesh if you want to be able to add in another unit to be able to give you greater coverage. But where things get really interesting is going to be the port count configuration on this unit. So you can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ports. Traditionally on most routers you generally only have 4 ports, and on a lot of mesh products you only have as little as maybe 2 ports. But the thing that I really love in terms of actually the port count configuration is, let's go ahead and go to the tech specs and see actually how this guy's breaks down. So one, very nice high performance chipset. So 1.8 gigahertz tri-core processor is really nice to see. Here you've got 10G. So 10G, generally this is a little bit on the more expensive side for products, but it's really nice to be able to see this for this unit, which right now the price positioning should be, I think, probably around $299. So this should probably be about $100 less than the tri-band based unit. So getting that 10G spec, and then also having the 2.5G and then 4 1G ports, I think that's fantastic. So again, you've got the fastest speed connection for a WAN port or LAN port, so that means for any ISP service, or if you want to connect this to a NAS or desktop computer. You're also going to have dedicated gaming ports on here. So the dedicated gaming ports just mean that if I just go ahead and connect my device, whether it's a console, desktop, laptop, whatever it might be, I don't have to configure anything. That device automatically gets prioritized for the lowest latency in terms of your setup. There's a lot of other really great features and functions that we have on our networking products. You know, industry-leading 3-year warranty. We have a really robust app that works on both iOS and Android, fast and easy setup. No paywalls like a lot of other companies for things like parental controls or being able to run your VPN on your router, and a lot of other really great features. So this is going to be coming up in the not too distant future, and I think for probably like 70% of people, this, along with some of our other Wi-Fi 7 dual band based units, is going to be a fantastic starting point for you if you haven't made an upgrade. So yeah, this is going to be the GS-BE2700X. All right, let's go ahead and go to our next product here. This is going to be a new update that we have in terms of our portable displays. This one should be hitting in the not too distant future, pretty soon right here. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I think this is going to be a great addition to be able to throw in your bag or have it as a secondary monitor in your desk setup. And this is going to be the Zen screen, the OLED, the MQ16FC. So this is going to be a 16-inch, 16 by 10. So that's nice because you get a little bit more of that vertical resolution, which especially if you kind of want to rotate this, maybe have this for like more documents or chat, streams, things like that. That's really nice to have that increased vertical resolution, right? Excuse me, the horizontal resolution, right? The vertical and the horizontal resolutions. This one also incorporates newly into some of our updated models is a pass-through power support, which is pretty cool. Auto rotation support. You have USB-C, mini HDMI, which are built in here. Keep that the USB-C does have DP support, so that means that you can connect this directly to things like a console, a laptop, other devices, and have the display signal and also have that be powered. The tripod support is really nice if you want to be able to have more flexibility at being able to mount this like in a more stationary capacity, but it also does have the integrated kickstand there as well. In addition to that, of course, you know, for those of you in terms of OLED, you know that just means you're going to have amazing contrast, amazing dynamic range, really great punchy pictures, right? So if you want to be able to view movies, video content, things along those lines, or even just high quality web-based interface experience, this is going to be really nice. Auto rotation support that's going to be built onto this unit as well. And the pass-through I think is great in terms of kind of simplifying kind of desk setup configurations as well. And this all comes in I think at a very reasonable price point, $279, and this will keep the same 3-year warranty that we have on all of our monitors. So across the board you're going to get a really great high performing product, really great experience in terms of that OLED. The tripod, if you're not familiar with a lot of our portable displays, when we talk about the kind of the tripod mount, let me see if we have an image over here. I don't know if I have an image for it. There's actually a threaded mount on the back that allows you to kind of easily go ahead and connect things like our Zen stand. The Zen stand is an optional accessory that allows you to go ahead and mount the display directly. I do also want to touch on, like all of our current monitors, is you do have our display widget center software. So this is actually available on both macOS as well as Windows. So if you want to be able to control and customize the experience for the monitor without physically having to touch buttons, you can actually just load up the application. So you can switch between different profiles if you want to adjust your brightness setting, if you want to be able to actually even have like specific color profiles to the specific programs. It's a really great feature here called App Tweaker. So if I want to open up my browser in sRGB mode, but then maybe I want to open up another application and have that open in maybe like scenery mode, or I want to maybe have my email open up in darkroom mode or different things like that, you can actually set different color profiles and different settings for different applications. Once you set that, anytime the application opens, it'll automatically shift to that color profile without you having to do anything. So I'm a really big fan of that. I'm also a big fan of the hotkey or the key bindings. For things like brightness, I love setting a key binding for like my brightness so that I can just go ahead and just easily scale up my brightness setting based on a custom key binding that I have available. So that is going to be the MQ16FC. I'm going to go ahead and drop this one on the chat there as well. So give me 1 second right there. All right, and did I drop in the chat for the BE? I don't know if I dropped in the chat for the BE. So let me go ahead and drop in the chat for the BE 7200X. Okay, there we go. Okay, so next one is, what do we have? Sorry. Is the pre-order update for the PG34WCDN. So I know this has been kind of a very hotly anticipated monitor. We actually talked about this just a little bit earlier when we had a user that was asking us for a recommendation. So this is pretty much the flagship series OLED display if you're looking for an ultra wide based option. So this is going to be 34 inches, 3440 by 1440, 360 hertz. It's also using the latest generation QD OLED pure RGB subpixel structure, so for improved text clarity, that ultra high refresh rate. Has that black shield technology, which helps to mitigate anything like the ambient light handling issues that prior QD OLEDs had. Plus you have the better scratch abrasion performance. Has adjustable HDR. This extreme low motion blur, or BFI, is a really nice feature. So if you can't necessarily drive those higher refresh rates, this can be engaged at like 120 hertz, but it gives you about the effective motion clarity of a 240 hertz display. Works really, really nicely for things like consoles. I'm a big fan of BFI support. I would also note that while it's not as talked about, I talked about it like in the PG32 UCDM, the aspect ratio control feature I think on a ultra wide monitor is really nice too, because effectively like I can run like a 27-inch version of this monitor, right? So that if I don't have games that correctly support actually the spanned resolution, then I can essentially have like a 34-inch monitor and a 27-inch monitor. And because the OLED will turn off those actually side portions of the display fully off, you don't really actually have like an experience like in prior older generation ultra wides, which were LCDs, which kind of those black areas were still kind of illuminated, right? Because the backlight was actually still on. So this one also will have the USB-C with the power delivery 90 watts, new 8-way picture and picture-by-picture support. So you have literally 8 different options to be able to actually scale out a secondary input if you want to be able to do that. DP 2.1, which is really only going to be resident for the latest generation GPU owners, so like the 50 series GPU users. So overall, fantastic option. And again, we're going to have the XG34 WCDMS, which will be kind of like the step down version, but you're still pretty much getting all of the same key technology. You're still going to get the latest generation QD OLED panel. You're still going to get the black shield. You're going to get the NEO proximity sensor, custom heatsink, the BFI, adjustable HDR. You just drop down that you don't have DP 2.1A. The USB-C power delivery is 15 watts, but you still have display support on that model as well. It's a different base, so instead of the metal tripod base, you have the compact metal square base. All right, and then the refresh rate from 360 to 280 hertz, but that model will be coming in at $899. So I think for a lot of users, that one is still going to be a very compelling option, but I'm going to drop this one in there if you're interested in checking this one out. So let me go ahead and drop that one in there. Okay, and let me give me 1 second here. Okay, so that's going to be the PG. Any questions that we got on that one? I'm not seeing any questions. The PG34WCDN is not also Dolby. It should be, I believe, on that monitor. I have to double check confirmation on whether that one will be Dolby Vision certification, because that has been like a difference sometimes in the past. Is like the PG versions have had Dolby Vision, and then the XG versions generally do not have Dolby Vision certification support. So that's a difference. Yeah, correct. No pre-order discount. Generally, for most pre-orders, we don't usually have like a discount on the pre-order. It's just because a lot of these products have high demand. This helps you to kind of make sure that you get the product in before maybe that second wave replenishment. And sometimes with the second wave replenishments, because of a lot of things that are kind of going on, sometimes that can be, you know, a bit pushed out by sometimes a couple of months. So it's one of the best ways to kind of try to make sure that you get locked in that initial batch allocation that's first coming in, right? But generally, no, there's not usually like a price reduction in terms of a pre-order. For the price promos, I would say, of course, watch out for the price promotions. No white version planned right now. As a whole, we don't generally have too many white displays. It's actually pretty expensive and challenging, because one thing a lot of people don't realize when you talk about producing a like white variant is that when you do something called machine tooling, so tooling actually sometimes has to be entirely redone when you go from one color to another color, because there can be actually things that you don't notice in one color that actually end up appearing if you were to use the same tooling within another color. This can be quite a bit more actually apparent when you go from like a black tooling to actually white tooling. So this can actually be an additional kind of cost for us to actually re-implement an entirely new set of tooling just to be able to do something in white. So many times that's actually not advantageous. It can be very costly and actually end up to more logistical issues in terms of production and a lot of just challenges that come around that. That being noted, you know, we have probably the biggest ecosystem in the industry right now between doing white and black components. I would say that monitors probably is that more reserved category, that broadly we generally don't do like multiple we don't do multiple product releases where we have like a white and a black version. We have tried to do a couple of things in that regard over the last couple of years, but also, you know, the reality is that a lot of the monitor you don't see, right, because you're talking about very thin bezels, so you don't see the front isn't going to look white or black. It's not going to look different. So the only difference is you were looking at the back of the monitor, which you may or may not see, and then the base. Definitely, it's fair to say that if you're really sensitive about the base, that could be a question. And that's also something that we're maybe even evaluating internally, is because many of our monitors actually use the same base design, is whether or not maybe as a future accessory, instead of making like a whole white monitor version, maybe we actually just sell like a white monitor base. So the back of the monitor, oddly enough, might be black, but the reality is, because you never see that, the only thing that you visually see is maybe having that white monitor base. So maybe that could be something that we could kind of implement or evaluate, as kind of having that as an accessory, right? Okay. Another update here is going to be on the ultra wide side. So going from like the very premium side that we had there with the OLED side, here we're going to go with an LCD, but I think this is going to be a fantastic option, especially for those of you that have a little bit more of a limited budget, but you want to step into a really nice ultra wide. This gets you into really one of the latest generations in terms of LCD technology that's out there, and I think a really nice balance. So you've got a 13440 by 1440, so it's the same resolution as the ones that we just talked about. And this is actually going to be a dual mode, which is pretty cool. So it's the first dual mode LCD that I think I've seen in terms of the ultra wide side, where you have the WQHD at the 200 hertz, and then you also have an HD at 400 hertz. So this is pretty awesome. And then look at that price again, $379, $380 for this. Fast VA, so this is going to have actually pretty nice response time, and also better than standard contrast. Most standard LCDs are generally going to be about 1,000 to 1,500 nits. 1,000 to 1,500 to 1 contrast ratio, but here the contrast ratio is going to be a bit nicer than that. While this is not what I would define as a HDR based display, the actual brightness specification here is going to be brighter than a standard based monitor. So this is going to be nice in terms of actually giving you a nice punchy bright image. So when we actually take a look at some of the specs that would really influence that, one, this is 120% sRGB. So 100% would be great, because that would just give us a nice good amount of color presentation for general content, which the vast majority of what you're looking at is going to be in sRGB. But 120 means that the things are going to look a little bit more punchy, a little bit more dynamic, kind of going into a full what's called wide gamut monitor. This also has 95% DCI-P3, which is great to see. And like I said, that typical brightness at 400 nits is much better than the standard brightness that we see within a lot of products at that 200, 250, 275 nits. So it's a punchy, bright panel that I really like. Full 10-bit, that nice refresh rate. The dual mode operation also gets based in there. You got picture-in-picture support, which I think is fantastic. Really nice granular color controls with a 6-color axis control, so if you want to be able to do things. You also get our ELMB sync, so that's going to be a form of backlight strobing. So similar to what I talked about, if you can't hit those high refresh rates, you could engage the lower refresh rate that gives you better effective motion clarity at a simulated kind of high refresh rate, right? You do get some basic speakers in there, a little bit better than standard. I wouldn't still say as good as some of our most premium units, which have like dual 5-watt speakers. These are going to be dual 2-watt speakers, but that's still fine for things like, you know, podcast, YouTube playback, you know, some basic music listening, things like that. I think it's entirely fine. And then you got 2 display ports, right? You got 2 HDMI ports, so that's a total of 4 ports on there. Plus, you got a USB hub that's integrated in there, which I think is going to be pretty slick. And then you've got tilt, swivel, and height, along with also the threaded mount. The threaded mount means that there's a little connection at the top of the monitor to let you put like something like a light, a microphone, or a camera built on board. But again, look at that price point. I think, you know, $380, this is going to be a banger for a lot of people. Really great option if you've been looking to upgrade and have maybe a wider, more expansive work desktop experience, or be able to have just a more immersive gaming experience. I think this is going to be a pretty sweet option right here. So let me go ahead and drop that one in the chat there. That's an interesting name, and a spray can. Yeah. You know, I would tell you that if you really wanted to change something as opposed to a spray can, I know you're saying you're kidding, but I would actually probably say it's like a wrap, like maybe using something like a circuit printer, and actually getting like a cutout and then using that to actually go over the back. And you can actually do some pretty nice actually cutout stuff with a lot of these new like kind of secret printers, which are pretty actually easy, and it's a nice way to kind of do mods without actually affecting things like warranty, still have it look quite nice and polished. So if that's something that you really wanted, that could actually be a nice pathway to maybe consider as well. Okay. Yeah, like kind of like, yes, like a wrap like cars. Yep. Raf says, I was checking previous Steams and saw the new 12-inch XG27UCG-W. Really excited for that. I also like that you chose glossy, which is kind of rare for a portable display. Yeah, so some of our displays, like the OLED monitors, actually have a little bit more of a glossy display, and it's a balancing act where, you know, for some products we favor an AR based, and others ones we don't. But I think for this, we did want to favor kind of that little bit more of a punchy type of display. It also has a really nice balancing act between the actual color gamut and the brightness performance to align with a lot of our current generation kind of ROG and tough gaming based gaming LCDs. But I agree. I think this is going to be one of the kind of the sleeper monitor updates that we're going to be releasing in 2026, and I'm very excited about this one going to be coming out. And I think that I did get the finalized MSRP, which I think actually in that stream, I don't think that actually I told people because it hadn't been finalized yet, but I did finish confirming that. So let me go ahead and double check. It should be $219 should be the MSRP for that one. So just in case if anybody's wondering about what he's talking about right here, this guy right here is, let me show you, is this one should be coming in probably within the next, I'd say the next 15 to 30 days. We should have this available, but this is going to be the XG27UCG-W. So this is going to be a 12.3 inch IPS 24.9 10-point touch secondary display, so kind of really optimally suited to be able to sit underneath your primary monitor, but you can do a lot of really cool stuff. It can work as a full secondary display so that you can move any UI elements on there, but it also has a touch input control on there, and then you also have the ASUS Control Center software that will allow you to go ahead and customize things with the 10-point touch. And then if you all kind of want to use it also from a more stat-based presentation panel, we've worked directly with 8064. You have a full licensed version that will come included along with specialized already pre-set up ASUS based skins that will allow you to go ahead and have like monitoring information for your system. So yeah, this guy's going to be coming out in the not too distant future. Okay, and let me see, what else do we have? think I had one other one. Oh yeah, and so I've got one other dual mode LCD. So we went from talking about the ultra wide dual mode. So we've got one other dual mode right here. And speaking of white, we do have a white update. So this is actually, I think, going to be a nice update that we have here for those of you that are going to be looking for it. And this one might be one of my favorite monitors. Again, also I think for a lot of people, they're going to be looking to maybe have an upgrade in 2026. So this is going to be the second generation dual mode base LCD that we've released. The original model was a 4K 160 hertz, and then it had FHD toggle to 330 hertz, I believe. So this one steps up to, yes, it's not a typo, 4K 162 hertz, and then it offers an FHD toggle at 485 hertz, so pretty awesome in terms of an ultra high refresh rate. And again, the pixel density at the 27 inches and 1080p I think looks great. Still can be nice and sharp. And then of course, if you really want that really nice pixel density and very nice sharpness, then that 4K 162 is fantastic. This is also going to be really well suited in terms of the overall spec. You're going to have pretty much everything you could really ask for. I mean, factory calibrated, all ROG displays are all factory calibrated. That's a key difference between Tough Gaming and our ROG based monitors, is that they're factory calibrated. So 95% DCI-P3. This even has a punchier level for that sRGB, 130% compared to that Tough Gaming that we talked about, which is 120. Very nice bright monitor in terms of that 400 nits that you have there. Full 10-bit based display. You also have that ELMB sync technology. All of our latest generation things like our shadow boost, dynamic actually shadow boost, which is quite nice on this display. DP, HDMI, and USB-C. The USB-C does support display out, which is great. So you got some flexibility there if you want to be able to connect some other devices. You also have 15 watt power delivery. Nice for things like keyboards, mice, tablets, you know, in-ears, different things like that. You know, you're going to be able to set things up. The tripod mount, and then 4-way ergonomic adjustment. So you've got tilt, swivel, pivot, and height. I think this is going to be a fantastic addition. I love you can get it right now, and you can get it into white. And I also really like the new ID design here that we have with that really nice compact XG based base. We will have the black version of this one also. I think the black one is actually just a little bit cheaper. I think the black one comes in at $399 versus this one, which will be $430. So the white is just a little bit more expensive. But overall, I think a really exciting update that we have here in terms of our dual modes. So quite a number of dual modes. Overall now, we've got this dual mode. We've got the XG27JCG, which is the 5K 180, 1440p 330 hertz. Then we've got an updated 4K 27, 4K27, which is a 4K 80, and then like an FHD, I think like 300 something odd hertz on that side. Then that 34-inch ultra wide, which is also a dual mode based offering that we also have. So we've got quite a number of actually dual mode based monitors at a number of different price points for those of you that are going to be interested. So let me drop this one in the chat there also. So Bobbin says, I would like to find a computer like my M32 model with the same features, like a 2 terabyte, but would rather have a faster processor. I'm not sure what your exact, if you can give me maybe some more kind of information on what you're kind of maybe looking for from a recommendation, I can try to do my best. Now, generally on this stream, we usually cover our PC DIY componentry. You don't necessarily cover our like system-based products, so like our laptop products. For a lot of our laptop stuff, I recommend checking out our ROG Pulse weekly stream that my friend Winston and Jake handle. But I can still give you some recommendations if you're really looking for some stuff on that side. But generally, this PC DIY stream, we focus on all of our PC DIY related kind of componentry. So if you're not aware, actually ASUS has like 4 internal what we call business groups. Our 2 generally kind of most focused kind of business groups for a lot of consumers is one, we have our SBG group. That's our systems business group, which handles things like our laptops, our gaming handhelds, and like our pre-built desktops. And then we have our open platform business group, which actually is over 15 product categories. It's everything from all of our PCDIY hardware, so like motherboards, graphics cards, fans, power supplies, coolers, chassis, all of that stuff, but also covers things like our peripherals, all of our gaming gear, monitors, networking, mini PCs, and many other items. So yeah, we have our 2 different business groups. And so this one focuses on everything that we kind of have within what we call our open platform business group, not our systems business group. But still love to try to be able to give you some feedback if you have some questions on that side. Okay, so that covers us there for that dual mode display. So that pretty much covers all of the new items that I wanted to touch on. So I think now I want to go ahead and make sure that before I get into promos and stuff like that, I want to quickly actually do the new UEFI demo on our new B850 base model and X870 base models. And then from there, I'll talk about promos because I don't know how long this is going to take. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long. It's just a little bit of a flyover to kind of show you guys the new HD UEFI firmware environment that we have on our latest generation motherboards. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at it. Again, if you guys have any more questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the stream. You guys can also drop them into the YouTube comments over time, or you can also make sure to join our ASUS PCDIY community. You guys can check us and join us out there by checking out that little QR code. That will take you to our ASUS PCDIY community. But let's go ahead and get ready to take a look at this new ASUS UEFI BIOS, the firmware environment. So this is going to be pretty cool. Again, this is only going to be applicable to our latest generation models, so 2026. So this is going to be for right now only AMD based motherboards because we've just launched new AMD based motherboards for 2026. So you've got the new X870 base models and then the new B850 base models that have this new HD UEFI firmware. And again, a lot of this is driven that these motherboards all feature a new option ROM, which is twice the size of the older option ROM, which has given us some more flexibility to be able to do an overhaul and add in a new visual presentation, as well as a couple of other things. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at it. I've got to get my little test system set up here, so let me make some adjustments here on this side so that I can go ahead and try to make this work here. I'm going to have to move my keyboard and try to make this work. All right, and let me see how we can do this. I'm gonna get this set up here on my B850 motherboard. So I'm going to be using the Tough Gaming B850 Neo. It doesn't matter. Actually, this model, the elements that I'm going to show you guys are pretty much the same for all of these, so it won't matter in that regard. And get my keyboard and my mouse actually from this system, and we'll use that here on our demo system. And I wonder, would you guys find with the mirrored display, or did you want the same display that I had right there? I'd be interested to know which one you guys favored, because I think I had it swapped for the layout for when I was showing it on the other system, and I didn't change the setting back, so nobody said anything, so I think it's okay on that side. So let's go ahead and start our system here. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, so we're going to be booting into our UEFI environment here. So yeah, we're in the new UEFI environment already. Wow. So let's go ahead and go to this page. Oh man, it looks so cool. I love this new UEFI environment. Let me go ahead and drop my window down here just a little bit for you guys. So question was, the ROG XG27UCG was at a certain time, 207. It wasn't, not the Gen 2. The Gen 2 just came out. So we did actually have the Gen 1, both, which was available in white and was in black. And we have been offering that in promo. So that, yes, you're correct. You might have even seen promotions. And it was a fantastic deal for the Gen 1, both in the white or the black, if we offered it on promo. But the Gen 2 is brand new. So the Gen 2 has not been on promo pretty much at all because it just launched. But the Gen 1 has been on promotion. JJ, how long after a beta BIOS is released does the next non-beta BIOS come out? It actually varies. I used to cover this a lot more in kind of the weekly updates, and I'll probably, I think in the streams going more forward, I'll bring back kind of talking about new UEFI BIOS updates, because some people they always want to know when the new updates come out and like what they might contain. But I would say on average, generally once we issue a beta release, usually the formal release will probably come within about, like, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks after that beta base release. It can depend though on a multitude of different factors in terms of kind of feedback that we get from the deployment from the community. Sometimes these beta releases can also contain things like supplemental MEI firmware, or they might have a GISA-based firmware, and there might be discussions between Intel or AMD, and they might actually update that base firmware again, and then we have to reissue a new update so other things can go along. So what I tell most users is generally that only real enthusiasts should probably be considering doing a beta-based release. I'd say in most intents and purposes, most users should focus on formal releases as opposed to beta-based releases, right? And as always, right, I do recommend that you make sure to kind of keep in mind that when you move, especially from one UEFI to another UEFI, if there's a change in the underlying MEI firmware or the basic GISA, keep in mind if you have performance tuning in play that you can actually see changes to the auto rules. So unless there's something specifically that's not working within the current build that you have that is then to be addressed within that new release, that I generally wouldn't recommend just updating the UEFI, right? There is a little bit of kind of the adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We generally release, of course, new UEFIs for a wide range of reasons. This could be to either support new CPUs, it could be implement new features or functions to enhance interoperability and compatibility for specific things that we get reports or feedback on. But again, if your build is working nominally and working well, then I would stay with the build that you do already have in place. All right, so this is the new UEFI BIOS firmware environment that we have. We're using our Tough Gaming motherboard. So you'll see the first thing overall is the overall just look and feel. It's got a really nice sharp appearance because now it's all in HD UEFI, so it's in high resolution. So this is something that we introduced on the prior generation on Z890, X870 boards. They all got an update to an HD UEFI based BIOS, so it just looks nice and sharp and clear. But the big thing is that visually you'll see is that now this probably has a little bit more of an alignment. It looks closer to like Armory Crate, but in the UEFI environment. So right here off the bat, you can see that we've got our CPU temperatures being reported, and we have a little nice little color-coded scale, which will show you the CPU temperature. And of course, as it gets hotter, then of course this would move over and the color would correspondingly change. You can see a quick readout here for your CPU temperature, your motherboard temperature. Some people wonder where that sensor is coming from. That's generally the PCH related sensor. So that usually will warm up most, usually when the graphics card is running a little bit more heavily on the system, or you're using a lot of the IO on your system, because that causes the chipset to warm up and produce a little bit more heat. Below that, you'll see a kind of a quick readout of different items that you have on your system, such as your CPU, your memory, and the corresponding density and the speed. Now, you do have one-touch options right here, so if you want to quickly enable your Expo, you could just toggle this on, and bam, you're good to go. That will enable your Expo. You can see then right over here, we've got fan controls, similar like we had in the prior generation. You can see this is a real-time illuminated value, so you can see I don't have a dual fan set up, so there's not something connected to the CPU and the CPU optional. Technically, actually, it should be connected to CPU, not CPU OPT. So I'm going to change that in real time, and you can see right there, I did this on purpose because I wanted to show you guys that actually I could pull that and then it would update in real time. But you can see right there that it's showing me, hey, my CPU fan is spinning. And same thing, when it's illuminated, you know those are connected and they're spinning and you're good to go. All of our, of course, new generation motherboards, and this is something we lead the industry in, have an 8-point fan gradient. It's the best in the industry. There are some competitors that literally have a 4-point fan gradient, and it's really cool that even on our most entry-level models that we have this 8-point fan gradient implementation. So one-touch option right here takes you in to be able to go ahead and control all of the items for fans. You can go in and just quickly select any one of the corresponding fan profiles, or if you want to set up your own custom curve, you can do that. You can go in and you can see that you have the 8 different points. You have the corresponding duty cycle, right, and the corresponding temperature. And you also see that you have 3 manual presets that you can go ahead and define. So that's a lot of granularity that if you want to be able to have essentially multiple different tuning profiles for different purposes, you can go ahead and do that. And then you can see that you've even got more controls over here for like what's called the ramping policy that you can set for the corresponding fans. Now, one thing that you might not realize, but on our motherboards, you can go ahead and set an input source within the operating system. And what I mean by the input source is that when you have your fans connected by default, they're all generally going to respond to the CPU. But a great feature that we do have within the Fan Expert software, which is within Armory Crate or the new ASUS Motherboard Manager, which is also new for these new AEMP motherboards, is you can actually set the input source to your GPU. I actually personally like setting my fans to respond to my GPU because my GPU is generally going to be the hottest running part of my system, not my CPU. And when I talk about wanting to bring more airflow in, it's generally because I want my GPU to be getting that. And generally when I'm gaming, the CPU is also going to be working. So I'd rather use that as a trigger. But you can't do that currently within the UEFI environment. If you do want to do that, you do have to do that within the OS and then enable the temperature input mapping option for the GPU. But that's a really great feature that we have. So Outside of that, you can see right here at the top, we have our quick setting access. This can actually also be customized, so you can see you have quick things like if I want to be able to update my UEFI BIOS. One thing that I really do love about the new UEFI BIOS as well is the new on this motherboard. We originally only offered this on Intel, but now on the AMD models you have it. You can actually see right here that we have a lot of new options for cap, zip, cap plus zip, wizard cap. There's a lot of really great options. The thing that really I love about this is that you can just download the UEFI firmware update, and you don't have to decompress the file. Literally just that compressed file, you can keep it on your flash drive, or you can keep it on your desktop. You can point the browser directly to that either flash drive or to the desktop, and you don't have to extract anything. It can actually just go ahead and do the extraction in real time and then complete the UEFI update. So I think this is a fantastic update. It just makes the flash process faster, simpler, and easier for you guys overall. So I'm going to go ahead and exit Easy Flash. You can go ahead and customize other elements here. If you, of course, want to quickly change any of your LED lighting on your motherboard, you can go in and you can jump into different quick presets that you have to be able to change the lighting parameters for how your motherboard is operating. Driver Hub by default will go ahead and auto launch. This is actually one of the best new features that we have on these new generation of motherboards. Is Driver Hub's an ultra small utility. It's less than about 5 megabytes. It will auto populate once you actually complete your OS installation, and built into the UEFI firmware is that we actually have the driver for the LAN as well as for the Wi-Fi now for this generation. So that means you have immediate internet access, and then by launching Driver Hub will allow you to have a one-stop shop to download all of your other drivers in the click of a button, as well as any other utilities. So it makes it really, really fast and simple. And this works independent of anything like Armor Crate. So if you just want to be able to get your system up and running, use that quick and easy access that Driver Hub is going to allow you to benefit from. To be able to get connected online, download all your corresponding drivers and then your utilities. And then from there, of course, if you want to install the ASUS Motherboard Manager or AC or whatever else it might be, you can go ahead and do that, right? And then also the My Hotkey is something you can quickly customize. I like to tell people, and this is also another area that I'll show you new within this new UEFI environment, that you'll see this persistent hardware monitor here on the right hand side, which will show you your active CPU frequency and your corresponding temperatures, as well as different kind of corresponding kind of values that you might be important to you, such as maybe the core voltage, the ratio, the frequency, and kind of other parameters. I think for these are probably really the most important parameters you would want to know. But I like setting my hotkey, and the reason why the hotkey is important is that these are hotkeys for the F3 and the F4, so you can actually set this up more directly to be able to allow you to have quick access to things that you might want to be able to do. So for me, I love having Easy Flash set up as 1. I don't like having the UEFI boot as my F4, so what I like to set up is I like to have Q Dashboard. So what I set mine up is F3 gives me that easy ability to boot straight into the UEFI BIOS if I want to update my BIOS, my UEFI firmware. And then F4 is the Q Dashboard, so that if I want to be able to quickly get a visual layout of everything that I've connected on my motherboard, how everything is working, I can just hit the F4 keys. And I don't actually have to hit the delete key to get into the UEFI firmware. So yeah, the ASUS hotkey feature, very, very cool. I love that feature. I think it's one of the best options that we have there. And then moving out here on the rest of kind of the easy mode interface, you can see that we have DRAM status. The DRAM status will show you which banks are populated, so A1 and B2. And then we have the corresponding memory readout information, the corresponding frequency that they're actually operating at, right? And then if you click that, you can also then see the corresponding storage-based information data as well. So you'll have pretty much all of your core data is there on the primary page. Now when I go into the more advanced menu, there are a couple of other cool things that you can actually find within our UEFI environment. I already kind of showed you some of the cool options, but one of the ones that I, again, want to highlight here is going to be, keep in mind on our latest generation boards, many of the models you'll find a really cool feature like our DIMM fit technology. DIMM fit, while I don't have it visible here on this one, DIMM fit actually allows you to go ahead and run a kind of customized, almost like custom XMP profile for your motherboard and your CPU combination. On the models that it does have it available on, it will actually take anywhere from as little as a few hours to as many as maybe 7 to 8 to 9 hours, but it'll go through automated permutations of making subtle tweaking adjustments that will allow you to then have a custom stored profile that then will more optimally suit the frequency scaling that you're hoping to achieve for the combination of your CPU, your motherboard, and your memory. It's the only feature like this in the entirety of the industry, and it might be one of the most compelling features that I think we've released in terms of DRAM tuning technology, probably in the last decade. It's a really, really impressive feature. So if that's something that you find interesting and that you want to be able to have more kind of information on, we'll probably do a dedicated stream on just DIMM-FIT in general, all the models that support it. There's a great write-up that we have on our EdgeUp website, and you can also check out our prior live streams where we've covered DIMM-FIT a little bit more in depth as well. But I want to go over here and go over into my tools and show you guys one other item here. So give me 1 second. There we go. And I want to show you guys the Q dashboard. So Q dashboard is one of my favorite features that we have. So this is a visual map that allows you to see everything that's going on with your motherboard. So you can see pretty much right now this will be specific to your motherboard model, and you can see how really nice it is. It quickly highlights everything as I'm toggling through, right? And you can see it highlights as I go to that section, right? Or if I go over right here, memory, I can see immediately there it's actually highlighted. It shows me actually which slots are installed, what's the total memory, what's the expo profile, all of that information is set up for there, right? If I want to be able to go to the CPU immediately lets me know what's my CPU, right? If I want to be able to go to my CPU fan, it can tells me, hey, the CPU fan is actually connected, right? So I love that information. I don't currently have an M.2 SSD installed, so that's the reason why I don't have that corresponding information that's there, right? But here you can see that it even tells me my USB devices, and it even tells me which device I have connected. So my USB port, it's telling me, hey, I have an RG Strix Scope NX Moonlight white keyboard, and then on my mouse, I can also see I've got an RG Strix Impact Moonlight white mouse also connected. This is fantastic that without any operating system, I can see real-time all of my connections that are present and what is working. So if I want to make sure that that actual device is connected, if it's registered, if it's working, I can go into the Q dashboard and see that. And you also have quick filters so that you can quickly filter if I just want to see just my USB devices, right? Or if I just want to see my M.2 devices, right? It will make it really simple and easy for you to filter what you want, right? So you can see all the fan headers, whatever you want. So I think this is one of the best features, again, that we've launched in our UEFI. Really maybe in the entirety, and I take that very dear to me because I've worked so closely with our team over the years to be able to incorporate so many of the specialized features that we have in our UEFI firmware. But I think it really shows why ASUS leads the industry at being able to offer the best kind of end user design thinking to make things faster, simpler, and easier and more friendly for builders at being able to give them the information they want within the firmware environment. Now the Q dashboard, it's not exclusive to these new models. Again, we had this on the prior generation Z890 and the X870 base models as well, the first gen models. But all of these new updates you can see are rolled into these new UEFI. But I absolutely love this feature. I think it's fantastic, works really, really well, and just helps to streamline the overall experience. So that is a little bit of a tour there. And the last one that I do want to show that a lot of people sleep on is going to be the search function. So the search function is going to be a really nice feature that we have built in that sometimes if you don't know what you might be looking for, right, you can actually go ahead and do like a search, right, for the different options, right, and then you can get indexing in there to take you to those corresponding sections, right, and you can go through there. So I really like that. That's an option right there that's up there at the F9 parameter. The last one too, sorry, that I want to show here is going to be this My Favorites tab. So a lot of people actually sleep on this My Favorites tab option, but the big benefit of this is that you can actually customize the this tab interface, right? And this just gives you more flexibility at being able to kind of lay out the environment that would be kind of most useful for you based on how you want to be able to access the different elements of the UEFI quickly and easily, right? So this is just a kind of a one-stop shop to be able to go ahead and give you more flexibility to not necessarily have to dive into many submenus and generally have most of the key values of what you're looking for to be able to kind of set your system up. So yeah, this is a flyover of the new HD UEFI firmware environment. Let me go ahead and go back over here to the full screen. Let me see if anybody has any questions before I go into the promotions and deals right there. So a few more weeks for the beta from the Crosshair X870F. If there's any recent betas for any of the AEMP boards, like I said, you probably see the update within, I'd say, like I said, in most situations, generally we'll have from beta to the formal release, probably about 2 to 4 weeks. But as I said, moving forward, I'll generally highlight in the weekly UEFI update releases new updates and releases that we have. I don't know if Lee, our community manager, is still doing it. I know that when I was running the community group, I would do weekly posts on all of the UEFI releases that we had for Intel and AMD based motherboards. But yeah, just like I said, just watch out. We're generally, as long as we're getting the information that we need to and the validation information comes back, then we can go ahead and complete that. Yeah. No decompression and no renaming the BIOS. Yeah, so it just makes that process so much easier. Really, really nice that you can literally just download the file. And a lot of people actually sleep on the fact that you don't have to put the file like on even a flash drive, is that you can actually put it on your desktop. So like when I flashed this motherboard recently with the new UEFI BIOS, I just downloaded it directly to the desktop. And then through the browser, actually our software is robust enough that we can actually use the desktop browser. I can browse to the desktop folder directly and then pull the file from that. So on my desktop or on my downloads folder, I can go ahead and point it directly to that file and do the flash. So it makes it really, really streamlined, where again, you don't even need a flash drive. A lot of people don't even realize that we implemented that feature set. It was actually something that when I got our team to put that in, I was really, really excited that we were able to do that. It would be nice if read only from the BIOS can be pulled in from the AC from Q dashboard. Yeah, that's something that we're discussing. I know some people would love to kind of maybe be able to have kind of like some of that being able to change, and so it is something that we're kind of trying to discuss with our team. It becomes a balancing act of like how many things sustainably we can kind of keep mushing into there. There's also sometimes pushback. Sometimes people don't want to keep seeing more stuff kind of put into the utility, but then we also have a lot of users that really appreciate kind of having a full consolidation. Even that right now we're seeing where there's some people that I would think incorrectly are negating, I think, on the current experience of AC, which I think AC is a really well balanced utility. It's lightweight, it's responsive, it's modular, it has a lot of really great synergy in terms of how you can go ahead and set it up. But there's some users that just want even something even simpler and even lighter, and then we had to develop the new ASUS Motherboard Manager, which was kind of like an update to the older ASUS AI Suite utility, which was a more basic motherboard utility, right? So there's always this kind of balancing act that the enthusiast community are enthusiasts and they have a lot of opinions, and so we have to kind of try to collect all that feedback and figure out, you know, how much resources we can devote towards which things to hopefully help the community feel that we're correctly supporting them in the wide range that they ask for that support, right? All right. So overall, I think that's pretty much it on that side. So that takes us through a little bit of that overview on that new HD UEFI BIOS that we have, like I said, on our latest generation motherboards. And I do want to note that for those of you that had been waiting on some of the new NEO motherboards, they are now in availability. So everything from the Dark Hero to the Glacial to the Crosshair 2006 is on pre-order currently. The Dash A has become available. The Dash F has become available. The Dash E has come available. I think right now the only NEO board that has not been released that we're still waiting on and should hopefully be available next month is the B850 ProArt Creator board, which will be the last model that we have not released yet as part of kind of the updated roadmap for the new AMP5 based motherboard. So that will be coming in the not too distant future. So let's go ahead and just wrap things up here, guys, with some great promos that we have for you guys. So if you've been looking for some deals, we're gonna fly through these, guys. If there's any other questions or comments or feedbacks, feel free to go ahead and drop them in there. I'll tackle them as best as I can right now, but let's go ahead and get to some promotions. All right. All right. So what do we have here? All right. First up, it's going to be, oh wow, one of them already sold out. So I'm not even gonna tell you, because that one already sold out. So this is the thing. Sometimes when I have some of these, oh my gosh, this one also already sold out, and I just checked these right before the stream. All right, this one's still on sale, so we're gonna go with the second one. All right, let's go ahead and go here. All right, so we've got the PA27UCD-MR. Actually, I just talked about this earlier when we were talking about that feature for the for the uniform brightness limiter. This is one of my favorite monitors that we just launched, and this is an amazing video because we literally just launched this monitor less than a month ago, and it's already right now on sale. So its normal price is $1,300. It's right now $200 off. I don't think you're going to have bigger savings like this probably for the entirety of the year. So right now this is coming at $10.99. This is a 27-inch 4K 240 hertz QD OLED based monitor. It's our only monitors that we actually have in our entire monitor lineup that have actually a full metal body. So if you really kind of want an ultra premium experience, I think Justin said he has the UCDM series right here. These are absolutely gorgeous displays with that really nice machined metal body. They allow for some really nice feel to the product and really have a premium aesthetic to it. Of course, you have great solid SDR brightness at 250 nits, and then of course you have up to that true HDR performance. So if you really want to be able to watch, video on demand services, online video content, and then of course gaming in HDR, this is a great option. Very tight color accuracy because this is under the Pro ecosystem, so they have very, very high standards in terms of the color accuracy tuning that we do out of the box. A cool feature that this unit does have is that it does have what's called a hardware IC. So that means if you want to be able to run even more advanced calibration on this unit, it stores the color data on the monitor. With most devices, when you actually do calibration, you store the data on the device. And so that means if you have multiple devices and you switch from, let's say, your desktop to your laptop, you actually break the color calibration. The output is dependent on the device you're connecting it to. But with this monitor, this actually has calibration technology that's built in. There's actually a chip that's inside the monitor that allows you to store the calibration data on the monitor. So even when you switch devices, it will keep the color consistency between any one of those devices. You also have Thunderbolt connectivity, which is a rarity. We don't really have that many displays that actually have Thunderbolt built on there. You have 96 watt power delivery, and you also have a USB hub that's built onto this unit. So I think this is a great option that we have within our lineup. And I do also want to make one other note. Very, very cool for our Pro monitors. They all now actually feature not a 3-year, but even a 5-year warranty with registration. So this is industry leading. They have a 5-year warranty with registration. So if you want definitely an outstanding monitor that is going to give you amazing kind of I/O connectivity, ultra high color accuracy, amazing HDR performance, some of the best in class options for calibration and tuning parameters, then I definitely would say check out the PA27UCG-W. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and drop that one in the chat for you guys. And let's go ahead and drop this one in here. All right. All right, so next one is, let's go ahead and take a look here at the PA. Hopefully this one is in stock. Okay, yep. So next one is going to be the PA278CG-W. I really love this monitor. I think this is a great value proposition at $50 off. Normally it's $300. Right now you can see it's $50 off, 250 bucks. So what do you get with this one? So this is 27 inches, 1440p. Very wide gamut display, 97% DCI-P3, 100% sRGB. This is a kind of a rarity. A lot of the content creator based displays are still only 60 hertz. This one gives you 144 hertz. Has USB-C with 96 watt power delivery. It does also support daisy chaining, which is really nice. That means that if you want to connect monitor to monitor, you can do that, versus if you want to have like 2 of these monitors side by side, normally you would have to connect 2 cables to the output device. So like here on my desktop computer, and I would actually connect 2 monitors. You don't actually need to do that. You can actually connect 1 monitor to the next monitor as long as that monitor supports daisy chaining. So that's really cool. Our latest generation ProArt monitors, for those of you who might be using this maybe with things like a Mac Mini or a MacBook, then you can also have our matched P3 color mode or our Mac mode kind of preset to parameters on there, and that also complements by our display widget center software, which also can be installed on macOS. It can also be installed in Windows. The KVM feature, which I absolutely love, that means that you have the ability to connect the keyboard and the mouse directly to the monitor and then have that be shared across 2 different devices. Beyond that, you have full 4-way ergonomic controls, so that means that you can go ahead and adjust this height, tivel, swivel, pivot. All of that 4-way ergonomic adjustment is going to be available to you on this model. And again, these units have also been upgraded with registration to be able to actually have a 5-year warranty as well. This is a fantastic all-around option, which I think for a lot of users, you're going to be hard-pressed to beat. Even with that, like I said, that high refresh rate, it's really, really nice, just smoother desktop animation performance. I'm a big fan of this guy. For a lot of people at that price point, I think it's a great addition that we have here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go this one. Drop this one in the chat. Okay. Next up, we've got the big brother to the PA27 UCD-MR. This is going to be the PA32. So pretty much everything that I talked about, you just update this one to 32 inches. This one will also come included with a monitor hood, and it also comes with our Kali control. So the Kali control is actually a new device that right now sells separately for $250. It's a really fantastic device. You can actually use it with any monitor or any display in general, but it works even better with an ASUS display. But it gives you the ability to have a colorimeter for calibrating SDR and HDR based workflows. You also have actually an OSD control to quickly control the monitor with physical, actually tactile buttons, and then also has ASUS dial support integration support, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1 device. This actually comes included with the monitor. So this is a really nice price savings. Normally this display is $1,900. Right now it's $300 off for $1,600. One of my absolute favorite monitors in the lineup, just like the PA27 UCD-MR, is another fantastic option that we have here. So this is going to be just the bigger brother version, the PA32. All right. And let's see. All right, last couple of promos here is we got some networking promos. So we have the RT-BE2700. This one is $40 off. Really great option for those of you looking to be able to upgrade maybe in terms of your Wi-Fi. Maybe you're running still like a Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6. This is normally $250, which is already a great price. But right now, at 40 bucks off at $210, this is a pretty monster of a unit in terms of performance. So one is you get 10G LAN, you get 2.5G, and quad 2.5G. So that's fantastic. And you even have a USB port. So you've got pretty much all of the Ethernet specification built on there. The USB WAN, which is great if you want to be able to have a fallback to 4 5G cellular connection. You can just attach your smartphone to there. Doesn't matter, Android or iOS. If your primary ISP goes down, connect that in there. Bam, now your Wi-Fi is going to be supported by your actual cellular device until you're back up and running. That comes all included at no cost, just like all of our advanced features on our routers, whether it's parental controls, whether it's on-router VPN support, so many of the other great features and functions that we have. All of those, they're not paywalled like many other competitors, and we also maintain still the 3-year warranty. This is one of my favorite units that I have in terms of my lineup, where this is also going to be a full tri-band based model. So you get 6 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and 2.4 gigahertz connectivity. All three of these really impressive in terms of the overall performance. This unit can easily exceed over 2.5 gigabits of wireless throughput, which is pretty insane for the price point that you're considering. But really the main limitation it would have is probably the square footage range. I would optimally recommend this for about 24 to 2600 square feet. Of course, you could always add in another router to this to make it an AI mesh enabled product if you want to be able to have even more broad coverage, or if you got very challenging kind of environments or things like that. But if you can fit within the coverage area that it has, this is a fantastic option that we have at a really, really great price. So this is going to be the RT-BE2700. Okay. And then for those that maybe need a little bit more coverage, this is going to be a great option where we've got the Zen Wi-Fi BD5. This is going to be right now, normally the 1-pack is already very price aggressive. It's a dual band product, Wi-Fi 7. It does have 2 Ethernet ports on there, 2.5G. So this is going to be $30 off at 110 bucks. Or you can get the double pack, which is going to be coming in at $50 off for $200. I think this is going to be a great, great deal. And you can see your coverage. So one unit will give you about 2,500 square feet. A 2-pack is going to give you 5,000 square feet, which for the vast majority of people, that's going to cover probably like 90% of people, if not more, right? And then the 3-pack is also $50 off right now. This is probably one of the strongest value props that we have. Very, very impressive. Although there's a sleeper model that I'm putting in here in my promos that pay attention, where even though it's the older generation, it might even be the better buy at a lower price point. So this is $300 for Wi-Fi 7 dual band. Each model has the same exact match ports, so they all have 2 ports available to them. This one does not have the USB WAN feature, so keep that in mind, but otherwise pretty much all the other features I talked about are going to be pretty much similar here. I think a great choice, and again, the coverage that you have here, again, keep in mind that you have the coverage. 1 would cover 2,500 square feet, 2 would be 5,000 square feet, and then 3 would be 6,800 square feet. 3 can also work really well even in sometimes like 3,000 square feet environments if you have a lot of really challenging RF environments, or a lot of kind of like things that might be obstructing kind of the Wi-Fi performance and you just need more flexibility. So yeah, that's going to be the BD5 that you have available to you there. And this is going to be the sleeper that I have right here. Actually, I forgot. I'm going to talk about the SSD enclosures as the very last option. So that's going to be the last item I'm going to touch on. But this is probably one of my favorite promos that I have right here within this product lineup, which is going to be the Zen Wi-Fi, the AXE. So this is a Wi-Fi 6E based product, not a Wi-Fi 7 product. But keep in remember, Wi-Fi 6E introduced also 6 gigahertz band support. There is no higher end modulation or 320 megahertz channel spectrum support, but still 160 megahertz and that 6 gigahertz connection, you still have ultra fast performance. This unit is a monster though. If we take a look at its original MSRP, it was $500. Right now for $200 off at $300, this unit is going to give you monster coverage where you have about like 6,800 square feet within this 3-pack configuration. This unit is also going to give you, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 ports plus the USB WAN backup feature that we talked about. Plus you still get the 2.5G connection on here. So this is ready for the future faster ISP services. And you get all of the great normal features that we have. So on-router VPN support, USB WAN, you get smart SSD management. So you can have dedicated bands for different types of devices. So you can have a dedicated VPN band, you can have a dedicated parental control band, you can have a dedicated IoT band, right? You can do all of this, but I think the performance for the range and the spec, this might be the best mesh combo that I've seen maybe in the last few months. Value prop. Even though it's not a Wi-Fi 7, that Wi-Fi 6E, I still think this is a really, really, really big value prop when you consider the performance. Keep in mind, this would actually offer even faster performance than you would get with the BD5 triple pack, even though that's a newer Wi-Fi 7 because that's only a dual band device, while this one is still a tri-band based device. So this one is going to give you a benefit in that regard. So I would definitely say check this one out if you're looking for a really great value proposition for great performance and ultra dense coverage while still giving you that 6 gigahertz band technology support. So really, really great option in that side. So the last thing that I want to touch about here is just going to be an update that we now have our ProArt SSD enclosure available. And so for those of you that might be kind of looking for the highest speed based kind of external storage based devices, we do have our ProArt 40 gigabit SSD enclosure. Go ahead and bring this up here. This is going to be the PA. Let me bring this up here. And we do actually have some corresponding promos that I'll drop in for this one. I think my product marketing team did tell me that we do have a promo on it right now. Yeah, so we have a couple of our laptops that if you do actually get one of our new ProArt based laptops, the ProArt P16, I think there's also the PX13, where there's actually a combination promo that's actually going to be coming in here for this. Let me see which details. I'm not sure if the details are fully shared. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, so there's a kind of combo savings that you'll see right there. You can scroll down to the bottom where you'll actually see that there's a bundle that you can actually get these bundled with either the ProArt mouse and keyboard or the ProArt SSD enclosure. And there's actually a savings you can have where you can see right there that you actually get the ProArt SSD enclosure at a lower price. So normally actually the ProArt SSD enclosure comes in at a higher price. So you can actually see the individual price right here. This unit is a ultra fast 40 gigabit base model, actually has a specialized 4-stage based fan on there. Quick tool is designed to be able to actually open up the unit as well as also install your PCIe NVMe M.2 SSDs in there. Notably much smaller than a lot of the competitors in the industry. It's actually the smallest 40 gigabit base device on the market while also offering best in class thermal performance. But you can see right here, it's standard MSRP is $120, but within the promotion right now, you can actually see that the actual add-on price is only $80. right, where you get some price savings right there. So you can see that you get that nice drop down in terms of the default. So you save 40 bucks versus that 120 if you consider one of the 3 ProArt based laptops that we have. But if you want to be able to just go ahead and pick up the SSD by itself, let me go ahead and show you this right here. So I just wanted to kind of highlight the current lineup that we have. So let me bring up here the kind of the different options that we have. All right. So pretty much the lineup is going to look like this, guys. Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and look at it this way. So the first one would be the ASUS Cobble. So the Cobble is going to be a 10 gigabits enclosure. Now for a lot of you guys, I think 10 gigabits is going to be great. My daily driver for a long time was only a 5 gigabits. Now keep in mind 5 gigabits is already very, very fast, right? That's going to be, you know, you could easily do 500 megabytes a second in terms of peak performance. That would already be a very nice fast flash drive. My normally daily driver, when I've been using a lot of copying, I've been using a USB based 256 gig, and then I got another 256 flash drive, and these were not even 500 megabits or 5 gigabits based full devices, right? But great for being able to keep my like backup libraries or drivers or different types of things or things like that going on. But of course the flexibility with an M.2 SSD enclosure, so I can go ahead and put in my M.2 SSDs, have more density, I can scale these out over time and just be able to maintain even better performance, right? So this unit is actually going to be 10 gigabits, so it's actually even faster than your standard fastest flash drives. You have better read and write endurance. You have overall better peak performance, especially if you're copying even larger files. This one's very reasonably priced. You can see right now, normally $35. We have it on promo right now for 30 bucks, essentially, right? So that's going to be the Cobble. I really also love like kind of really nice, clean, minimal, refined kind of look and feel to this unit. So yeah, this is going to be the Cobble. This is kind of the starting point. We then also have the original ROG Aerion. So the Aerion is the first ROG M.2 SSD enclosure that we have, which if you want even a little bit more thermal dissipation performance, you want a little bit of RGB lighting, you can get the ROG Aerion, and that one's a 10 gigabit based option. Moving from the 10 gigabit options, we go into the 20 gigabits. So 20 gigabits, keep in mind that you do need to have a USB port that supports 20 gigabits. Now we've had 20 gigabits on motherboards for quite some time. You can even go back to, you know, like the X570 based era of motherboards. Even we have, you know, B650 based motherboards that have this, many of the mother models, but you want to make sure that you have a 20 gigabits based port. So this is 4 times faster than a standard 5 gigabits USB port. So this is actually very fast already. But 20 gigabits is that next step up. And here the Tough Gaming A2 that we have is my real kind of go-to. I use the Tough Gaming A2 all the time. This is actually very, very resilient in terms of IP68 rated. So this, you could literally, you can drop it in water, you could step on it. This is a really tough, really durable based product. Has a pretty toolless based design in terms of the internal M.2 SSD installation, and then a little bit of a semi-tool to be able to go ahead and access internally to be able to install it. And that's part of the ultra ruggedness, of course, for the IP certification. If you want something that is still very durable, very resilient, but even simpler in terms of the installation experience for opening and installing the M.2 SSD, we have the upcoming ROG Alios, which is the update to the ROG Aerion. So this one will also be a 20 gigabit space solution. This one looks really, really nice. It has this liquid silicone rubbered external shell, which also is really, really nice. Has this nice little RGB accent. Also comes included with a full SSD management console so that you can go and see all of the information for your SSD in terms of the temperatures, your operating parameters, and things like that. And then you can see a nice quality thermal pad. We've really led the industry, I'd say, in terms of the overall quality of what we're doing within our closures and the thermal dissipation performance. I love this real simple, easy toolless design mechanism to be able to open it and then to also be able to install it. So both items are very simple. So again, the ROG Cobble, 10 gigabits. The ROG Aerion, 10 gigabits. The Tough Gaming A, there's an A1 version, which is also a 10 gigabit solution. So there's actually 3 different 10 gigabits. Then on the 20 gigabit side, we go to the Tough Gaming A2, and then we have the Alios. So those are the 2 20 gigabit solutions. And then lastly, we have our flagship based model here with the ProArt PA440SU, which is going to be our 40 gigabit space model, right? So this one comes in at 120. Keep in mind here, of course, you need to use this ideally with a USB 4 enabled port. That is going to help to make sure that you get that ultra fast 40 gigabits in terms of having that best performance possible, right? In that really compact based profile. So those are going to be the different SSD solutions that we have in terms of the M.2 SSD enclosures, right? So no encryption on the ASUS. No, there's no hardware-based encryption. But if you need encryption, my recommendation, like on one of my personal volumes that I run, would be something like, you know, you can run TrueCrypt, or you can run like an open utility to be able to encrypt your volumes, which I think is actually a better alternative than doing it through like something that comes included in the unit or something along those lines. So yeah, my recommendation would be looking at some of the broad number of encryption options that you have available, or you could also do compression password protection based volumes, right, where you could use utilities like WinRAR or 7-zip or different things along those lines if you want to go that route as well. But you know, there's a lot of good options for encrypting your files, right? If you want to be able to go ahead and do that, right? So yeah, that I think covers pretty much everything I wanted to be able to go ahead and touch on, guys. So that I think covers us on the stream. Let me go ahead and quickly see if there's any other questions that might have came up in here. When does the ROG X-Real release? It's actually available today. It should be available on pre-order. Let me go ahead and see if I can drop the link right now, but it should already be listed on Best Buy. We already dropped the pre-order link last week. But yes, the one important note to keep in mind that right now that the majority of the samples that are available, there's actually two different sizes that you have in regards to what's called the IPD, or the pupillary distance. So there's an IPD63, which is probably for the majority users. And then we also have the, there's another variant, which will be the IPD69, which for some segment of the population, they will actually need an IPD69. Now, it's very important that you generally want to match the IPD information, because if you have the incorrect IPD information, then actually the image might be a little bit blurrier than it would normally be if you have the correct IPD data. So in terms of the, yeah, it's right here. Let me go ahead and drop this in. So it is available right now. Best Buy, you can go ahead and get it out right now. Best Buy is our key launch partner for this. We will eventually have it listed also on the ASUS web store if you do want to be able to go ahead and pick it up. But let me drop that in the chat right there if you want to be able to check out the X-Real glasses. Okay. And again, I don't think Best Buy right now has any listing difference between the IPD63 and the IPD69, but I believe all of the samples that they are initially carrying are the IPD63 based models. But what you can go ahead and do is, if you want to be able to pick this up and you want to verify that this is the correct model for your eyes, essentially, right, that this is going to work ideally for you, is you want to scroll onto the ROG X-Real website that we have right here for the R1, and there's actually a little section that we have that allows you to go through the measurement process and verify your IPD. So I would recommend that you do this first. Let me scroll down here. Yeah, so it sees right here, it says find your IPD. You want to click on this, and it will guide you through actually the process on how to actually be able to check your IPD data, and it will give you your IPD value. And then you can see that we will kind of recommend to you, right? Should you get the IPD63 model, or should you get the IPD69 model? Okay. Does the new UEFI include the crosshair? Yes, all of the new motherboards that will release moving forward will all have that new UEFI BIOS. So that includes, because the Dark Hero, which is the foundation for the new Crosshair 2006, the Anniversary Edition based motherboard, that one is essentially the same motherboard. It's just been updated with that new ID design and a little bit of the tweaks, like with the new OLED display as well. But they will both have all of the new elements of what I've talked about here and shown in the new HD UEFI firmware. Plus, also keep in mind that that one has the most advanced features as far as like our flagship motherboard. So you have things like the differential dye-sense voltage monitoring, which is the most accurate amongst any of the motherboards that we offer. You have both versions of the DIMM technology, right, that are available. Like all of them, the best stuff that we can put is all going to be on that Crosshair 2006, because they were all on the Dark Hero based model as well, right? The Kali control no longer works. So you must have just got that. That's a little bit tricky, because sometimes adding in things like hubs can complicate things a lot. And just in my experience, especially Thunderbolt, it's a problematic technology sometimes at times in terms of kind of the interoperability and the validation standards. Sometimes there can be things like firmware updates that are required for those dock devices to be able to make sure that they pass through. And sometimes also OS updates can break interoperability. It is reality. So sometimes it can require another software update to be released. My recommendation is I would kind of report that not only to our service and support team, but also I would report it to CalDigit. Our team, we already closely work with MacOS in terms of doing interoperability and validation on our side. So if there's something that happened on kind of the OS side, we're already going to be accounting for it in a future update or patch that either might be issued directly by Apple, or it could be an update that we'll have to release for our software or firmware. But either which way, share that with our services support team. If they need to, they can make sure to escalate that out, and all the corresponding stake owners can be aware of it. But I can tell you that there are known variables that sometimes people don't account that those docs can actually introduce, and that's the reason why those docs actually can be sometimes the most kind of I would say the most probable at causing sometimes interoperability or compatibility issues. So it's very important that first I would recommend and check if you do have the most updated version of the driver for that device, if it requires a driver, and at a minimum, if there's a new version of firmware for that device that is working. So I would double check that, but make sure please to share that feedback with our services support team so that they can go ahead and do debugging on our side and check on those things, okay? I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, I think that wraps up everything. So thank you guys for joining us on today's stream. It's always been great to be able to go ahead and show you guys some of the latest and greatest from ASUS. If you guys have any other questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to drop them into the comment section. If you guys haven't joined us in our ASUS PCDIY community, make sure to go ahead and check out the community by checking out that little QR code. We didn't do the PCDIY Builder Spotlight because I did a little bit of the demo on this one, but it'll be back this week. And if you guys want to make sure to have your build featured here on the PCDIY live stream, as well as on the ASUS social media channels, make sure to submit your build or your upgrade, right? Because we've got two spotlights. We've got the ASUS Spotlight, which can count for any piece of hardware that you have that you've upgraded to ASUS. We'll spotlight those users. And then we've got the ASUS PCDIY Builder Spotlight, where we love to show off your builds. At a minimum, it has to be an ASUS motherboard and an ASUS graphics card, and we love to be able to show it off on this build. So you can find out more details again by joining the ASUS PCDIY group and using the submission form, or you can check out the link in the description for the submission form as well, so that we can go ahead and highlight your build. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and have a fantastic 3-day weekend. Take care, take it easy, and best of luck with your builds. Bye-bye.